The air in Memphis was thick with anticipation, even away from Beale Street. 14-year-old Cassidy Thorne knew that feeling well. It was the electric buzz that hummed before a storm, or more importantly, before a concert. Tonight, the king himself, Elvis Presley, was playing. Cassidy, clutching her worn-out guitar case, felt a familiar ache in her chest. Not just the fans' thrill, though that was certainly there, but a deeper, more personal yearning. She dreamed of music, she breathed music. Her small shared bedroom in their modest house was crammed with notebooks, full of lyrics, melodies hummed into an old tape recorder, and a stack of records, mostly Elvis. Her parents, bless their hearts, supported her passion with whatever little they had. But little wasn't enough to buy new strings, let alone a better guitar or proper lessons. Sometimes Cassidy felt like her dreams were trapped inside her beautiful birds with clipped wings. Tonight, she wasn't going to the concert. Tickets were a luxury her family couldn't afford. Instead, she had found a spot just outside the venue, a small alleyway where the roar of the crowd and the faint throb of the bass could still reach her. She'd brought her guitar, hoping that simply being close to such musical greatness might somehow spark something in her. She closed her eyes, strumming a quiet, bluesy chord, trying to imagine the full, vibrant sound pouring from the stage. Concert ended and the crowd began to disperse, a river of excited chatter flowing past her alleyway refuge. Cassidy packed up her guitar, a familiar sadness settling in. It was a silly thing to hope for magic just by being near. She turned to leave, her shoulders slumped, when a voice deep and smooth as velvet cut through the departing crowd's noise. "Hold on there, little lady." Cassidy froze. The voice, it was unmistakable. Her heart leaped into her throat. She slowly turned. Her eyes, Presley? He stood just a few feet away, leaning against the back wall of the venue, surrounded by a couple of burly men who were clearly security. He wore a dark, casual suit, a stark contrast to his glittering stage wear, but his presence was still immense like a sun. His faintest smile was gentle, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "You got a guitar there," he observed, nodding towards her case. "Were you playing along with us?" Cassidy could only nod, mute with awe, her cheeks flushed. She felt small, awkward, her clothes plain, her guitar a cheap, battered thing. Elvis chuckled softly. "Don't be shy. I heard a little something from over here. Sounded sweet." He pushed off the wall and took a step closer, his eyes, so often seen on album covers, now looking directly into hers. They were kind, intelligent, and held a hint of weariness that somehow made him seem more human. "You a musician, darling?" I tried," Cassidy managed. "I can see that," Elvis said, his gaze lingering on her face, then on her guitar case. "That's a good thing, loving music. It'll get you through a lot." He paused, then his eyes twinkled. "What kind of music do you play?" "All kinds," she replied, finding a sliver of courage. "But mostly I write my own. And I love the blues, like you, and gospel." Elvis's smile widened. "Gosta soul. Why don't you play me a little something?" Cassidy's jaw almost dropped. "Play for Elvis Presley." Her hands trembled. I couldn't." "Sure you can," he insisted gently. "Just a little piece, whatever you're working on." He gestured to the empty alleyway. Nervousness warred with an overwhelming desire to seize this impossible moment. With shaky hands, Cassidy unlatched her guitar case, pulled out her instrument, and took a deep breath. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to block out the legend standing before her, trying to just play for the music itself. She began to strum a simple, heartfelt melody. She'd written a song about longing for a brighter future, infused with the bluesy tones she adored. Her voice, usually small, gained strength as she poured her soul into the lyrics. When she finished, the alley was silent except for the distant city hum. She opened her eyes, bracing for polite dismissal. But Elvis was looking at her with an expression of genuine appreciation. He clapped slowly, a soft, rhythmic sound. "Well now," he said, his voice quiet but full of warmth. "That was something special, Cassidy. You got real talent. A real gift." Tears pricked Cassidy's eyes to hear that from him. It was everything. Elvis reached into his pocket. Cassidy thought he might be pulling out an autograph book or maybe a small bill, but what he pulled out was a ring. It was a large, brilliant diamond set in a heavy gold band. It sparkled, even in the dim light of the alley, catching fire with every slight movement. It was distinct, recognizable, fauvent. This was his ring. Cassidy gasped, shaking her head. "Mr. Presley, I couldn't possibly." "Nonsense," he said, his voice firm. "Nonsense," he said, his voice firm but kind. "A little spark to keep your fire burning." Cassidy stared down at the glittering diamond in her palm. It felt impossibly heavy both in weight and significance. "It was more," she whispered, looking up at him, bewildered. Elvis smiled, that famous knowing smile. "'Cause sometimes," he said softly, "a little bit of light is all it takes to help someone see how brightly they can shine. And you, Cassidy Thorne, are gonna shine. Now, you take care of that. And don't you ever stop singing." With a final warm nod, he turned his security detail, already moving to shield him, as he walked away, disappearing into the Memphis night. Cassidy stood rooted to the spot, the diamond ring still heavy in her trembling hand, the ghost of his words echoing in the sudden silence of the alley. She had met Elvis Presley, and he had given her a diamond, and Elvis pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Her dreams, those birds with clipped wings, suddenly felt like they were soaring. The walk home was a blur. Cassidy's feet moved automatically, but her mind was reeling, replaying every second of the encounter with Elvis. His voice, his smile, the way his eyes had looked at her with such genuine kindness, and the ring, it felt like a dream, a shimmering, impossible fantasy. When she finally fumbled the key into the lock of their front door, the familiar scent of her mother's cooking, usually so comforting, felt strange, almost foreign. The small, cluttered living room, the worn armchair, her father reading the newspaper. It all seemed too ordinary, too real, after the extraordinary event she had just experienced. "Cassidy, darling, you're late," her mother called from the kitchen. "Dinner's almost ready." Cassidy stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. Her hands were still trembling. She looked down at her palm. The ring was still there, glittering even in the dim light of the hallway. It was real, impossibly real. The diamond seemed to pulse with the silent light, a tiny star in her hand. "Everything all right, honey?" her father asked, lowering his news parrot with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," Cassidy whispered, her voice barely audible. "I saw Elvis." Her parents exchanged glances. They knew how much she adored him. "All right, Honorable, you go wash up," her mother said gently. Thinking she was just overwhelmed by the excitement of being near the concert, Cassidy nodded. But instead of heading to the bathroom, she walked directly to the kitchen table and carefully, almost reverently, placed the ring on the worn wooden surface. It sat there, a blazing beacon against the dull wood, radiating an unbelievable opulence that made their humble kitchen seem even humbler. Her mother, turning from the stove, caught sight of it. Her eyes widened. Her father, who had followed Cassidy into the kitchen, let out a low whistle. "What in the good Lord's name is that?" her mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. It's Elvis's ring." Cassidy managed the words, tumbling out in a rush. "He gave it to me, he said. He said I had a gift. He said it was a promise." Her parents stared at the ring, then at each other, then back at Cassidy, a mixture of disbelief and astonishment on their faces. "Elvis Presley gave you that?" her father asked, his voice slow and disbelieving. He picked it up carefully, turning it over in his hand. The weight of it, the cold gleam of the diamond, seemed to mesmerize him. "This isn't just any ring, Cassidy. This is a fortune. A fortune." The word hung in the air, heavy and loaded. Cassidy knew it. She had seen the rings Elvis wore in magazines. She knew their value. It was more money than her family had ever seen, more than they would likely see in a lifetime of hard work. He said it was a promise, she repeated, her voice small, to keep playing music. Her mother, recovering from the initial shock, pulled out a chair for Cassidy. "Sit down, sweetie. Tell us everything, every single detail." So Cassidy recounted the story, from finding her quiet spot in the alley to Elvis's unexpected appearance, his kind words, her trembling performance, and, finally, the incredible, unbelievable gift. As she spoke, her parents listened, their expressions shifting from skepticism to awe, finally settling on a kind of dazed wonder. "So, what do we do with it?" her father asked, carefully placing the ring back on the table. "This could change everything, Cassidy. Your mother's medical bills, a new roof, your brother's college fund." He trailed off, listing the burdens that weighed on their family burdens. Cassidy knew well the thought had already crossed her mind. Selling it. It was the obvious, practical solution. It could lift the crushing financial strain from her parents' shoulders. It could buy them freedom, comfort, security. It could solve so many problems in an instant. But as she looked at the glittering diamond, a different feeling stirred within her. It wasn't just money. It was a piece of Elvis. It was a symbol of his belief in her, a complete stranger. It was a tangible representation of his generosity. His spirit selling it felt wrong, like betraying the trust he had placed in her, like squandering the magic of the moment. "He said it was a promise," she murmured again, almost to herself, "to keep playing, to shine." "And you can still do that, honey," her mother said gently. "You can shine with a full belly and a roof that doesn't leak. Think of what this could do for us, Cassidy." The practical voice in her head screamed, "Sell it. Be sensible." But another voice, a quieter, more insistent one, whispered, "What would Elvis want? What would truly honor his incredible gift?" That night, sleep wouldn't come. Cassidy lay in bed, the ring clutched tightly in her hand, its cool weight, a constant reminder of the day's miracle. She imagined the possibilities: money, freedom, security. But then she imagined Elvis's kind eyes, his words, "A little spark to keep your fire burning." Was selling it truly keeping the fire burning? Or was it just extinguishing it for a quick warmth? She thought of his music, the way it lifted people, brought joy, inspired hope. Elvis was more than just a singer. He was a phenomenon of generosity and passion. He had given her not just a diamond, but a profound belief in herself. How could she turn that into mere cash? How could she use such a sacred gift for something so fleeting? The weight of the gold felt like the weight of a monumental decision. It wasn't just a ring, it was a crossroads. And Cassidy knew with a certainty that settled deep in her heart that she couldn't simply trade it away. Not yet, not until she understood what true shining meant. The next few days were a whirlwind of hushed conversations, curious glances from neighbors. Her father had understandably told a few trusted relatives about the unbelievable event, and news traveled fast in their small community. And Cassidy's own internal debate. The ring was kept in a small velvet pouch hidden deep in her sock drawer, but its presence loomed large in their house. Her parents, while overwhelmed by the ring's monetary value, respected Cassidy's quiet determination. "You don't have to decide right away, sweetheart," her mother had said, sensing her daughter's conflict. "Just think it through carefully." And Cassidy did. She thought about it constantly during school, while doing chores, even in her dreams. She practiced her guitar, but the melodies felt different now, infused with a new sense of purpose. She wasn't just playing for herself anymore, she was playing for Elvis, for the belief he had shown her. She pulled out her Elvis records, listening to his voice with new ears. It wasn't just the flashy hits, the hip-shaking rock and roll. It was the gospel albums, the ballads, the raw emotion in his voice. She remembered stories of his generosity, how he often gave away cars, jewelry, money to strangers, to people who needed a helping hand or just a moment of kindness. He didn't just sing about love, he lived it. A little bit of light is all it takes to help someone see how brightly they can shine. His words echoed in her mind. What if she could be that light for someone else? What if the ring wasn't just about her shining, but about helping others shine? One afternoon, she visited her old music teacher, Mrs. Gable, a kind, elderly woman with a house full of instruments and a heart full of patience. Mrs. Gable had always encouraged Cassidy. Seeing a spark in her that others might have missed, Cassidy didn't mention the ring. She just wanted to talk about music, about its power, about how it could change lives. Music isn't just notes on a page, Cassidy, Mrs. Gable had said, her eyes twinkling. It's a language of the soul. It can heal. It can inspire. It can bring people together. A song can change a moment, but music itself can change a life. Cassidy walked home that day, a new kind of energy bubbling inside her. Change a life. Yes, not just her own, but others. She looked at her neighborhood. It was a place of resilience, but also of struggle. Kids her age often dropped out of school, got into trouble, or simply drifted, lacking purpose or opportunity. There were no music programs in their schools, no affordable lessons, no place for young, aspiring artists to gather, to learn, to create. Their dreams, like hers once had been, were often clipped before they could even take flight. And then the seed of an idea, small at first but growing rapidly, began to take root in her mind. What if the ring wasn't sold to solve immediate financial problems, but used to create something lasting, something that would benefit her community, something that would keep the spirit of Elvis's generosity alive? She thought about a place where kids like her, kids who loved music but had no means, could come and learn. A place where instruments were available, where teachers volunteered their time, where creativity was nurtured. A place that would offer hope, discipline, and a path forward through the power of music. A community music center. The idea thrilled her and terrified her in equal measure. It was audacious, impossibly grand for a 14-year-old with no money and no connections. But the more she thought about it, the more it felt right. It felt like the true meaning of Elvis's gift. It wasn't about giving her a fish. It was about teaching her how to fish and then asking her to share her catch. She pulled out her notebook, not to write lyrics, but to sketch a building, classrooms, a small performance space, a lending library of instruments. She named it in her head, the Melody House. Simple, welcoming, a place where melodies could find a home. But how? How could she, a teenager, make such a dream a reality? It was a symbol, yes, but it was also a tangible asset, a source of immense value. She realized that perhaps the amazing thing wasn't just keeping the ring or just selling it. It was about leveraging its value, not for personal gain, but for community good. Not selling it outright, but perhaps using its story, its very presence, to inspire others to secure the initial backing needed for such an ambitious project. She envisioned a future where the Melody House stood, tall, humming with the sounds of children learning guitar, piano, drums, voices soaring in harmony. She imagined the smiles on their faces, the confidence blooming in their eyes. That, she thought, would be true. Shining. That would be a legacy worthy of Elvis's kindness. Path ahead was foggy, filled with unknowns. But for the first time since receiving the ring, Cassidy felt a sense of clarity. Her heart, which had been so heavy with indecision, now felt light, buoyed by purpose. She took out the velvet pouch, slipped the ring onto her smallest finger, where it was still too big but felt oddly comforting. The diamond pulsed with silent energy. Not just a fortune, but a beacon. A seed had been planted, and Cassidy was ready to nurture it, no matter how impossible the task seemed. The initial excitement of her idea for the Melody House quickly gave way to a mountain of questions. Where would she put it? Who would teach? How much would it cost? And, most importantly, how could a 14-year-old with no experience convince anyone to invest in her ambitious dream? She started small. She drew detailed blueprints in her notebooks, sketching every room, imagining where the instruments would go, where the students would practice. She researched local community centers, looking up what they offered, how they were funded. She spent hours in the public library devouring books on nonprofit organizations, grants, and fundraising. Her parents, though still a little bewildered, watched her with a mixture of pride and concern. "This is a wonderful idea, Cassidy," her mother said one evening, looking over her shoulder at her meticulously drawn plans. "But it's huge. Are you sure you're not getting ahead of yourself?" "No," Cassidy said, her voice firm, conviction shining in her eyes. "This feels right. This is what the ring is for." She knew she couldn't sell the ring. It was a symbol, a catalyst, but it also had immense monetary value. Perhaps she could use that value, not by exchanging it for cash, but by using its story, its incredible provenance to open doors. Who wouldn't be intrigued by a story involving Elvis Presley and a diamond ring? Her first real step beyond research and dreaming was to talk to someone who knew about getting things done in their community. She thought of Mr. Henderson, a retired lawyer who lived down the street. He was known for his sharp mind and his involvement in local charities. He was also a kind man who had always encouraged her. Nervously, Cassidy made an appointment. She dressed in her best and only nice dress, carefully placed the diamond ring into her purse, and walked to his stately Victorian house. When she sat across from him in his study, surrounded by towering bookshelves, her heart hammered against her ribs. "So, Cassidy," Mr. Henderson said, his voice gentle, "your mother told me you had an interesting proposition for me." Cassidy took a deep breath. She pulled out her meticulously drawn plans and began to speak, her voice gaining confidence as she explained her vision for the Melody House. She talked about the lack of musical opportunities for kids in their neighborhood, about the talent she knew was out there waiting to be discovered. She spoke about music as a tool for empowerment, for building confidence, for finding a voice. Mr. Henderson listened patiently, occasionally nodding, his expression unreadable. When she finished, the room was silent. Cassidy braced herself for a polite dismissal, for him to tell her she was too young, too naive. Instead, Mr. Henderson leaned forward, his gaze direct. "This is a noble goal, Cassidy. A worthy one, but it will require considerable resources. Land, building, instruments, staff. Where do you propose to find such funding?" This was the moment. Cassidy reached into her purse and pulled out the velvet pouch. She carefully extracted the ring and placed it on the polished surface of his desk. The diamond blazed under the lamplight. Mr. Henderson's eyes widened, recognizing it immediately. "Good heavens, child. Is that?" "Yes," Cassidy said, her voice clear. "It's the spark he gave me, and I want to use it to light a fire for other kids." She explained how Elvis had given it to her, how it had changed her perspective, how she couldn't just sell it for personal gain. Mr. Henderson picked up the ring, examining it closely. He knew the stories of Elvis's lavish gifts. This was no ordinary piece of jewelry, this was history. He looked from the dazzling diamond to Cassidy's earnest face, seeing not just a child with a wild dream, but a young woman with a profound sense of purpose. "You plan to use this as collateral?" he asked slowly. "We could display it, tell its story, and ask people to contribute to build the Melody House in its spirit." A long silence followed. Mr. Henderson leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. Tapped his fingers on the desk, his gaze moving between the gleaming ring and Cassidy. Finally he spoke. "And let's see if we can find some other people in this community who share your vision. People who believe in the power of music and the power of a single act of kindness." A wave of relief washed over Cassidy. It wasn't a yes, not yet, but it was a path forward. The dream of the Melody House, born in the quiet despair of an alleyway and nurtured by a king's generosity, was slowly, miraculously taking shape. Mr. Henderson proved to be an invaluable ally. He helped Cassidy draft a formal proposal, outlining the mission, vision, and operational plan for the Melody House. He introduced her to key figures in the community, philanthropists, business owners, and local politicians. But the journey was far from easy. Cassidy quickly learned that dreams, even ones sparked by a legendary rock and roll king, faced harsh realities. A music center for underprivileged kids. With all due respect, Miss Thorne, that's a lovely sentiment. But where's the funding going to come from? Mr. Thorne, a prominent banker, whom Mr. Henderson had arranged a meeting with, said with a dismissive wave of his hand. He hadn't even looked at her detailed plans. "We have a unique story," Sir Cassidy explained, trying to keep her voice steady. She then recounted the story of Elvis and the ring, pulling the velvet pouch from her bag to reveal the dazzling diamond. "This ring, given by Elvis Presley himself, is a symbol of hope and generosity. We believe its story can inspire people to contribute." The banker's eyes widened at the sight of the ring, but his skepticism quickly returned. "A pretty trinket, certainly, and a charming story, but we deal in hard assets, Miss Thorne. Millions of dollars for a new building, ongoing operational. Cost a ring, however valuable, isn't enough collateral for that kind of investment. If you want to sell it, I can connect you with a reputable auction house. That would be a substantial sum for your family, I'm sure, but as for a community center based on a sentimental story, no." Rejection came in many forms. Some people were polite but firm, explaining the financial impracticalities. Others were openly dismissive, seeing her as a naive teenager with a fanciful tale. A few, particularly cynical individuals, hinted that the story was made up or that she was trying to exploit Elvis's name for personal gain. That sting hurt the most. "Are you sure about this, honey?" her father asked one evening, seeing the weariness in her eyes. Maybe Mr. Thorne was right. Selling it, setting up a scholarship fund, that's still a wonderful thing. And it would take a lot of pressure off us. The temptation was immense. It would be so much easier. Her family could have comfort. She wouldn't have to face these constant rejections, these doubting looks. She could just be a regular kid again, focused on her own music. But then she would look at the ring. Sometimes she would slip it on her finger, feeling its cool weight. She'd close her eyes and hear Elvis's voice. "Don't ever stop singing. A little spark to keep your fire burning." She remembered the look in his eyes, the genuine belief. It wasn't about the money for him. It was about the spirit. How could she give up on a dream that had been given to her by such a profound act of kindness? If she sold the ring, it would solve some problems, yes, but it wouldn't create a lasting legacy. It wouldn't spread the light. It wouldn't truly shine. One particularly discouraging day, after another unproductive meeting, Cassidy found herself sitting on the porch swing, the ring clutched in her hand. She felt tears welling up. This was too hard. Just then, Mrs. Gable, her former music teacher, walked by carrying a bag of groceries. She stopped, seeing Cassidy's dejected posture. "Long day, dear." Cassidy nodded, unable to speak. Mrs. Gable sat beside her. "Building something worthwhile is never easy, Cassidy, especially when you're trying to do good in the world. There will always be people who don't see your vision or who think it's impossible, but impossible is just a word. It's a challenge, not a dead end." Cassidy had finally told Mrs. Gable the full story, and her teacher, unlike others, had believed her implicitly, her eyes shining with wonder and pride. "You have to believe in yourself and in your dream, even when no one else does." Mrs. Gable's words were like a balm to Cassidy's weary spirit. She remembered Elvis's own struggles, his rise from poverty, his relentless pursuit of his dreams against all odds. He didn't give up, and he gave her the ring as a symbol of that very perseverance. A renewed sense of resolve hardened Cassidy's features. She stood up, the ring sparkling in the afternoon sun. She wouldn't give up. The obstacles were immense, but so was her determination. She would find a way. The Melody House would be built, not just for the kids in her neighborhood, but as a living testament to the power of kindness, the enduring magic of music, and the incredible impossible gift from the King. Cassidy and Mr. Henderson continued their relentless campaign. They held small community meetings, sharing the vision for the Melody House. Cassidy spoke passionately, her voice growing stronger with each presentation. Even though the immediate results were disheartening, people listened. Some were touched, but no substantial financial backing emerged. The ring, while intriguing, wasn't enough to sway the cautious investors and philanthropists they encountered. Then came a breakthrough from an unexpected quarter. Mrs. Cable, deeply moved by Cassidy's dedication, suggested they reach out to Mrs. Evelyn Sinclair. Mrs. Sinclair was an older woman, a reclusive widow of a wealthy Memphis industrialist. She was known for her quiet philanthropy, particularly in the arts. But she rarely engaged with new projects. She valued discretion and genuine passion. She doesn't care for grand presentations or slick brochures, dear Mrs. Cable advised Cassidy. She cares about heart and a good story. Armed with renewed hope, Cassidy and Mr. Henderson secured a meeting. Mrs. Sinclair's mansion was grand, almost intimidating. Filled with antiques and art, Cassidy felt a familiar flutter of nerves, but she also felt a quiet confidence. This time, she wasn't just presenting a plan. She was sharing her soul. Mrs. Sinclair, a frail but sharp-eyed woman, greeted them in her study. She listened patiently as Cassidy, without notes or props, poured out her dream. She spoke of the children who longed to play, the empty spaces in their lives that music could fill, the vibrant community she envisioned, and then she spoke of Elvis. She told the story of the alleyway, the impromptu concert, the king's quiet kindness. She described how he had looked at her, not seeing a poor child, but a promising musician. And then she carefully placed the diamond ring on the polished desk between them. He said it was a promise, Mrs. Sinclair, Cassidy said, her voice filled with emotion, to show that true generosity can build something magnificent. Mrs. Sinclair picked up the ring. She didn't examine it for its monetary value, but held it gently, her gaze distant, as if seeing more than just the diamond. Elvis was a complicated man, she said softly, her voice raspy with age. But he had a good heart, a true one. He gave away so much, not for show, but because he genuinely wanted to make a difference. She looked at Cassidy, her eyes piercing. And you, child, you understood that gift, didn't you? You saw past the sparkle to the spirit. Cassidy nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Yes, ma'am, I did. A long silence followed, punctuated only by the ticking of an antique clock. Then Mrs. Sinclair set the ring down. I have heard many proposals over the years, young lady, many well-intentioned ideas, but none with such a remarkable story, or such genuine purpose. You are not asking for charity. You are asking for the opportunity to spread a kindness that was shown to you. She leaned forward, a faint smile touching her lips. I will fund the land acquisition, and I will provide the initial capital for the construction of the Melody House, on one condition. Cassidy held her breath. That you, Cassidy Thorne, remain at the heart of this project, that you continue to guide it, to infuse it with the same spirit, and that the story of this ring, she gestured to the diamond, is shared with every child who walks through those doors as a testament to what belief, generosity, and music can achieve. Cassidy felt an almost overwhelming surge of relief and joy. Oh, Mrs. Sinclair, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Mr. Henderson, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, let out a quiet sigh of relief and a rare, broad smile. This is not a loan, dear, Mrs. Sinclair continued, her voice firm. It is an investment in potential, in community, in the enduring power of a good story. You will not need to use the ring as collateral. It will remain yours, a cherished reminder of the genesis. The Melody House, her improbable dream, was truly going to happen. The spark Elvis had given her had ignited a fire, and now Mrs. Sinclair's leap of faith had provided the fuel. The ring, her precious, untouchable symbol of hope, had done what money alone never could. It had convinced someone to believe in the amazing power of a story. With Mrs. Sinclair's significant backing, the Melody House rapidly moved from dream to reality. A suitable plot of land, an old, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of their neighborhood, was acquired. Architects and builders were hired. Cassidy, still a high school student, spent every spare moment at the site, poring over blueprints, choosing materials, and making countless decisions. She was learning not just about music, but about construction, fundraising, and community organizing. The initial demolition and groundwork were loud and dusty, transforming the decrepit warehouse into a skeletal framework of what would become a vibrant hub. Cassidy reveled in the noise, seeing it as the symphony of a dream being built. She brought Mrs. Gable to the site, walking her through the future classrooms, the rehearsal spaces, and the small, intimate performance hall. "Going to be glorious, Cassidy," Mrs. Gable said, her eyes shining as she imagined the sounds that would soon fill the empty spaces. True to her word, Mrs. Sinclair ensured that Cassidy remained at the heart of the project. She wasn't just a figurehead, she was actively involved in every aspect. She helped design the curriculum, reaching out to local musicians and retired teachers to volunteer their time. She started collecting instruments, donated pianos, guitars, drums, even a slightly dented trumpet. The story of the ring, while not yet widely publicized, spread within the small circles of people involved in the project. It became a quiet legend, a source of inspiration for everyone working on the Melody House. It wasn't just a building, it was a testament to kindness and the incredible impact one person's generosity could have. Cassidy kept the ring safe, wearing it only on special occasions when she needed a personal reminder of her purpose. Its brilliance still fascinated her, but its true value now lay in the story it represented, the hope it embodied. As the building took shape, community engagement grew. Local businesses donated supplies, volunteers helped with painting and landscaping, and families signed up their children for future classes. The Melody House wasn't just Cassidy's dream anymore. It was becoming a community dream. Cassidy also took on the role of the first instructor. She started small, holding informal music workshops in the partially completed building or in a rented church hall, teaching basic guitar chords and vocal exercises to eager young children. She saw the same spark in their eyes that Elvis had seen in hers. Many of them had never held a real instrument before, their faces alight with wonder. One particularly memorable day, a shy boy named Leo, no older than 8, struggled with a guitar chord. His fingers were too small, too clumsy. He was about to give up, frustration clouding his eyes. Cassidy remembered her own early struggles, the moments she had almost quit. She knelt beside him, gently guiding his fingers. But everything worth doing is hard at first. The most important thing is to keep trying. Every time you try, you get a little bit better. Even Elvis Presley had to practice. She then told him in simple terms the story of the ring, about how Elvis had told her to keep shining. "This isn't just about playing music, Leo," she explained. "It's about finding your voice. It's about not giving up even when things are tough. And it's about sharing your light with the world." Leo looked at her, then at the guitar. A flicker of determination entered his eyes. He tried the chord again, and this time a clear, sweet note rang out. A wide grin spread across his face. That single note, clear and hopeful, was more rewarding than any concert she had ever attended. It was the sound of her dream coming to life, note by note, child by child. Finally, after 2 years of relentless effort, the construction was complete. The Melody House stood proudly, a modern, welcoming space, humming with the promise of music. It had soundproofed classrooms, a recording studio, modest but functional, a library of instruments, and a small, inviting performance stage. The grand opening was a day of celebration. Mrs. Sinclair, though frail, was present, beaming with quiet satisfaction. Mr. Henderson stood beside her, proud of Cassidy's unwavering spirit. And Cassidy, standing on the threshold of the Melody House, felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She was no longer just the shy girl from the alley. She was a builder, a leader, an inspiration. She looked at the diamond ring, now displayed in a specially designed secure glass case in the main hall of the Melody House, gleaming under the lights. It wasn't just a diamond. It was a beacon. It was Elvis's enduring gift. transformed into a place where countless others could find their own music, their own light, and their own way to shine. The Melody House quickly became the vibrant heart of the community. Within weeks of its opening, it was bustling with activity. Children and teenagers from diverse backgrounds and with varying levels of talent flocked to its doors. They learned guitar, piano, drums, violin, and singing. They formed bands, wrote songs, and discovered a passion they never knew they possessed. Cassidy, now a young adult, dedicated herself completely to the Melody House. She was the executive director, but also an active teacher, mentor, and even a friend to many of the students. She still played her own music, sometimes performing at local charity events, but her primary focus was on nurturing the musical dreams of others. Her own personal musical journey had transformed from a solitary pursuit to a shared one, richer and more fulfilling than she could have ever imagined. The impact of the Melody House was undeniable. Kids who had once spent their afternoons aimlessly on the streets now filled their time with scales and harmonies. Youngsters who had struggled with self-esteem found confidence on the stage. Troubled teens discovered a healthy outlet for their emotions through songwriting. The sound of laughter, strumming guitars, and soaring voices filled the building from morning till night. One of the most heartwarming examples was the transformation of a quiet, withdrawn girl named Maya. She had come to the Melody House on the urging of her grandmother, her head down, her eyes rarely meeting anyone's gaze. She wanted to learn piano but was too shy to play in front of others. Cassidy recognized a familiar nervousness in Maya, recalling her own reluctance to play for Elvis. Patiently, Cassidy worked with Maya, teaching her in a quiet corner of the music room away from the bustling main hall. She didn't push, but encouraged. She shared stories of her own struggles, and sometimes she would point to the diamond ring still gleaming in its display case near the entrance. "That ring reminds me that even the biggest stars started small," Maya Cassidy would say gently, "and that someone believed in them even before they believed in themselves." Slowly, Maya blossomed. Her fingers, initially hesitant, danced across the piano keys. Her shyness began to melt away, replaced by a quiet confidence. One day, she surprised everyone by stepping onto the main stage during a student showcase and playing a complex classical piece, her performance flawless and deeply moving. The audience, including her beaming grandmother, erupted in applause. Maya, for the first time, held her head high, a triumphant smile on her face. This was the power of the Melody House. This was the ripple effect of Elvis's gift. The story of the diamond ring began to spread beyond the immediate community. Local newspapers ran features on the Melody House, highlighting its unique funding origin. King's Spark, How a Diamond Ring Built a Music Haven, read one headline. Journalists visited, interviewing Cassidy, Mrs. Sinclair, and the students. The tale of Elvis's spontaneous generosity and Cassidy's selfless dedication to turning that gift into a community resource resonated deeply with people. Donations, large and small, started to pour in. People from all over the country, touched by the story, wanted to contribute to the Melody House's mission. The center expanded, adding more classes, instruments, and even a small scholarship fund for advanced students. Cassidy never took credit for the success. She always attributed it to the spirit of the gift. It was Elvis's belief, Mrs. Sinclair's generosity, and the incredible passion of everyone in this community. I was just the fortunate recipient who understood that some gifts are meant to be shared, not just kept. The Melody House didn't just teach music. It taught resilience, teamwork, and the importance of giving back. It proved that one small act of kindness, when nurtured with purpose and vision, could grow into something truly extraordinary. And at its heart, gleaming silently in its display case, was the diamond ring, a constant sparkling reminder of how it all began, a testament to the King's enduring legacy of kindness. Years turned into decades. The Melody House, once a fledgling dream, had grown into a nationally recognized institution. It had produced countless talented musicians, some who went on to professional careers, others who simply found joy and purpose through music. Its alumni included teachers, doctors, and community leaders, all of whom credited the Melody House with shaping their lives. Cassidy Thorne, now in her late 30s, was a respected figure in the arts and philanthropy world. She had received numerous awards for her work, but she remained grounded, her focus always on the students and the community. She still taught classes, her passion for music undimmed. The story of the diamond ring was a cherished legend within the walls of the Melody House, shared with every new student and visitor. But the true, full public story of its genesis and subsequent transformation had never been fully told on a national scale. Until now, a renowned documentary filmmaker, Sarah Chen, heard about the Melody House and its unique origin story. Intrigued, she visited Memphis, spent weeks at the center observing classes, interviewing alumni, and most importantly, spending time with Cassidy. Sarah was deeply moved by Cassidy's quiet dedication and the profound impact of the Melody House. "This isn't just a story about a diamond, Cassidy," Sarah said to her one afternoon as they sat in the quiet performance hall, the diamond ring sparkling in its display case nearby. "It's a story about a legacy. Elvis's legacy, yes, but also yours. How one selfless act can ripple through generations." Sarah proposed a full-length documentary, a national broadcast that would finally unveil the entire amazing story to the world. Cassidy, initially hesitant about the renewed spotlight, agreed, realizing it was an opportunity to share the true power of music and generosity. The documentary crew filmed for months, capturing the vibrant life within the Melody House, the heartfelt testimonials of students and parents, and the emotional interviews with Cassidy, Mrs. Sinclair, now in her 90s, frail but sharp as ever, and even Mrs. Gable. The filming of Cassidy's personal story was particularly moving. She recounted the night of the encounter, her voice filled with the same awe she had felt as a 14-year-old. She described her initial confusion, the debate with her parents, and the overwhelming feeling that selling the ring would be a betrayal of Elvis's profound belief in her. "It wasn't just about the money," Cassidy explained to the camera, gesturing towards the gleaming ring. "It was about the spirit of the gift. Elvis didn't give me a handout. He gave me a spark. He gave me hope. And I felt a profound responsibility to take that spark and ignite something bigger, something that would truly shine." She then detailed the arduous journey, the rejections, the skepticism, the moments of doubt, and finally Mrs. Sinclair's leap of faith. She spoke of the years of hard work, the challenges of building and sustaining a nonprofit, and the immense joy of seeing young lives transformed by music. The documentary aired on national television a year later. It was a sensation. Millions watched, captivated by the heartwarming narrative of a diamond ring, a spontaneous act of kindness, and the incredible, enduring legacy it built. Viewers were moved by Elvis's unheralded generosity and by Cassidy's selfless vision. The story became a national phenomenon, trending on social media, sparking conversations about philanthropy, art education, and the power of paying it forward. The documentary highlighted the Melody House's unique model, teaching music not just as an art form, but as a tool for life skills, discipline, collaboration, creativity, and self-expression. It showed how a simple act of kindness could set off a chain reaction of good, creating a lasting impact far beyond the initial gesture. After the documentary aired, donations surged. Music schools and community centers across the country reached out to Cassidy, wanting to replicate the Melody House's model. She became a sought-after speaker, sharing her story and inspiring others to invest in arts, education, and community development. The diamond ring, once a hidden treasure, was now a globally recognized symbol of extraordinary giving and visionary action. It stood proudly in its display case, a silent, glittering testament to the amazing thing one young woman did with a king's unexpected gift. Its story, finally unveiled to the world, was even more profound and beautiful than anyone had ever imagined. It was a warm Memphis evening, much like the one decades ago when everything had changed. Cassidy Thorne, now in her 50s, stood on the stage of the Melody House's main performance hall, a gentle smile on her face. The hall was packed, filled with students, alumni, parents, and community members, all gathered for the center's 40th anniversary celebration. The Melody House was thriving, a testament to enduring vision and community spirit. Its original building had expanded, encompassing more classrooms, advanced recording studios, and a larger concert hall named the Evelyn Sinclair Auditorium. The organization had also established a significant endowment, ensuring its future for generations to come. Cassidy had just finished giving a speech, recounting the journey of the Melody House from its humble origins. She had spoken about the countless lives touched, the melodies created, and the dreams nurtured within its walls. As always, she ended by turning to the shimmering diamond ring, still prominently displayed in its custom-built secure case near the stage entrance. This, she said, her voice soft but clear, is where it all began, a spontaneous act of generosity from a man who understood the power of music and the importance of belief, power of music, and the Mace Tresley he free to build a place where every child, regardless of their background, could find their voice, their confidence, and their passion through music. The amazing thing about this ring, she continued, wasn't its monetary value, but its inspiration of a dream, the foundation of a community. It taught us that kindness can be a catalyst for extraordinary change. It taught us that a gift, given with pure intent, can transform not just one life. After her speech, a group of young students from the Melody House took the stage, performing a soulful rendition of one of Elvis's gospel songs. Their voices blended in harmony, filled with the joy and passion that the Melody House fostered. As Cassidy listened, her eyes drifted to the ring. It gleamed, catching the stage lights, a silent witness to the beautiful music being made. She remembered that night in the alley, the quiet conversation with Elvis, his words, and the surprising weight of the diamond in her hand. She had been so lost then, so unsure of her path. But his simple act of kindness, his belief in a stranger, had set her on a trajectory she could never have foreseen. Over the years, Cassidy had learned that Elvis's legacy wasn't just in his iconic music, his electrifying performances, or his global fame. It was also deeply embedded in his generosity, his spontaneous acts of kindness, and his willingness to use his immense platform to help others. This ring, this very diamond, was a tangible piece of that compassionate heart. The Melody House was a living, breathing testament to that legacy. It was the echo of a king's kindness, resonating through decades, inspiring new generations to find their song and to share their light. As the music swelled, Cassidy smiled. The birds with clipped wings, her dreams from so long ago, were now soaring, not just for her, but for thousands. And somewhere she knew Elvis would be smiling too, knowing his diamond ring had sparked an amazing symphony of generosity, hope, and beautiful music that would continue to play for many years to come.